This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. A lot of geopolitical action to pour over with Steven Bucci. A lot of positive developments. Eden Alexander being released, the last U.S. hostage held in captivity by Hamas. That's happening today. The Trump administration finagling the escape of Venezuelan dissidents from the clutches of the Maduro regime. In addition to some of the indications about what's coming with China, what's coming with Saudi Arabia and this Middle Eastern trip that the president is about to embark upon to secure more investment dollars in the United States. But I want to start with this. And I'm not sure I believe the D.C. press corps' reporting on this, but
what?
There is reporting, so let's discuss it. The idea that the Trump administration is preparing to accept a super luxury Boeing 747-8 jumbo jet from the royal family of Qatar, a gift that is to be available for use by Trump as the new Air Force One until shortly before he leaves office, at which time the ownership of the plane would be transferred to the Trump Presidential Library Foundation. The reporting on this, I emphasize, is that the Department of Justice drafted a analysis of this. The possibility of accepting this gift is to make sure that it is not violative, or to argue that it is not violative of the Constitution's Emoluments Clause. And that, according to the reporting on this, that is what the DOJ concluded. There is no prohibition to accept the aircraft for use consistent with the office and then transfer it to a nonprofit presidential foundation at the end of Trump's term. I can't imagine that Trump would take this from Qatar, no less. Take this from anybody, but from Qatar, no less, which is, yes, they've been given credit for being a mediator with respect to hostage releases, but they're also a safe haven for Hamas. Qatar is not a good actor, not to mention the billions of dollars they have poured into American universities, in their own sort of academic washing to influence the West, not unlike the Chi-Com's Confucius Institutes. I mean, they're not I wouldn't call them an ally. They may be an ally of convenience in situations like the war in Gaza, but they're not a rock-ribbed ally that you lean on.
Yeah, but why would they give him such a lavish gift, too? And according to CBS News, that they had flown it to West Palm for him to see it a few months ago.
Yeah, well, the idea that they might offer something like that is one thing. The idea that a president would accept something like that is another. For more on all these topics, Steven Bucci served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official. Now a visiting fellow in the Hertiage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Steven, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show, particularly after a busy weekend.
Yeah, very busy. So let's start with that reporting of this possible gift to be conferred to the administration from Qatar. I mean, does that strike you as problematic if true?
Yeah, it does. From a legal standpoint, our leaders get big, expensive gifts. Obviously not as big as a 747, but it's kind of that's a pretty extravagant one. But they get expensive gifts, and there's a whole set of rules that they have to follow to utilize them. Normally the big, expensive gifts get turned over to the U.S. Treasury, and they either dispose of them or store them, because even though they're handed to an individual, you can't. There's a limit about the cost that you can accept as a personal operator. And so if you want to accept it, you then have to write a check for the value of that gift. I've seen, people get handmade shotguns given to them by some potentate, and they decide, okay, I'd like to keep that one. So we get it evaluated,
And you pay market rate, right?
And then you pay the market price for it. And that's perfectly fine. I've seen other people take it to an extreme. My old boss, Secretary Rumsfeld, he'd get given a hat by a unit that he visited, a standard military unit baseball cap, and we'd have to get it valued, for like $12.50, and he'd write a check for it. So, he was paying more in administrative costs than he was the value, but he would never accept anything without paying for it. This is different. They're giving it to the government, but specifying it's going to be used by the president until the end of his term. I'm not a lawyer. I'm sure they can find a way to accept it. I'm not sure it's a good idea, as for all the reasons you articulated about Qatar's position right now. They're not our best friend in the world. They are, a radical Shia government that is helping Hamas at every turn. Even though they're, on the other hand, they're then, facilitating the negotiations at the same time. Reporting says they're telling Hamas, hold out, don't give them the hostages yet, you can get more. But from a security standpoint, it would be really difficult to clear that aircraft, because the Air Force One is a flying skiff. You could do top secret compartmented information facility stuff on that plane. And to get that plane to that level when someone else has built it, someone else has tricked it out, would be almost impossible to get it cleared by the security people. So I think this is going to turn out to be, thanks very much, we appreciate it, but we're going to have to pass.
Well, I'm all about timing, though, because this happened on the same weekend that they announced that they're going to release the last American hostage.
Oh, yeah, I think that there's no doubt that this was done specifically to try and ingratiate themselves with Trump, to make Qatar look as good a partner as possible. And how, they can do this because they can. They got enough money to do it. They don't care. But I just don't see it being a viable thing. I can't believe that it's going to be appropriate for the president to be flying around in Qatar's Air Force One with an asterisk next to it.
And even
unseemly.
That's it. Unseemly. That's it. The optics of it. Even if you could, I assume we could sweep the aircraft to make sure that there was no surveillance or security breaches and so on and so forth. I assume that we would have the capacity to clear it in terms of being safe and secure for the president and his team. But that's sort of not the point. The point is, you're flying around in a 747 given you by a radical Shia regime from the Middle East. What is that?
It's a Trojan horse.
Yeah, it is. It's a big flying Trojan horse. And yes, they can go in and sweep for bugs like they do in hotel rooms and that sort of thing. But this is a really high-tech piece of equipment with, bazillions of computers and chips all over it. Frankly, there's no way you could effectively clear that. When I was an attaché in Albania and they built me a new office that was going to be a skiff, they had to fly in cleared bricks and cleared bags of cement and 2 U.S. Navy engineers to come in and build the garage for me. We couldn't use local workers.
Wow.
We couldn't use local materials. All that stuff had to be flown in, had to be American, because otherwise it would not reach the level of being a skiff. I can't believe that they're going to replace every chip in that big old airplane. It's just not going to happen. So I don't think they can clear it. I think that is a non-starter from Jump Street. And then you still got to work out all the legalities of it and that sort of thing. So I think this is going to turn out to be a big dust storm that turns out to be nothing. But you never know. I mean, there's just stranger things have happened. This one would be up there at the top list of the strange things, though.
Well, I mean, just sticking on that score, the leader of Syria, al-Shara, who is a designated terrorist, according to our State Department, wants to strike a deal with Trump. He's offering oil and gas access, peace with Israel, and even a Trump Tower in Damascus. I want peace with my neighbors. I want a Trump Tower. I want U.S. investment. He wants what is good for the region, including what's good for Israel. So says al-Shara, the new Syrian dictator. And this, of course, is in advance of Trump and the team heading to that Saudi investment conference this week.
I'm a little dubious about that. I mean, this guy is making a lot of effort to appear like something he's not. He trimmed his beard. He's wearing a suit. Meeting with Emmanuel Macron, like they've been bosom buddies, like they went to school together. He's an Al-Qaeda terrorist. Just changed the name of his organization and managed to take over the country. And he's still killing people that disagree with him. I'm glad he's making overtures towards Israel. Israel needs to make the decision on whether those are legitimate for them or not us. I hope to goodness that the president doesn't decide to build a hotel in their country. I'm not sure that's a good investment for him or a smart one for the country. So I think we should use this opportunity to pressure this guy to change, make demands about stopping persecution of his people, that sort of stuff, and to hopefully get him to come to some sort of accommodation with Israel. But boy, I think it's a little bit precipitative to jump on this horse and say he's now our friend. He is the George Washington of Syria. That's a stretch, a big one with this guy. He is still a terrorist, not just because the State Department says so, but because that's what he's doing inside his own country.
Sticking in the region, that deal that Trump struck with the Houthis or Ansarallah last week to stop the bombing. They're going to stop messing with U.S. ships, and we're going to stop eliminating them, I guess. But there's a caveat to that. That was a deal between the Houthis and the United States, but it left out our allies who weren't on board with our bombing of the Houthis. And so ships from Israel, Greece, Great Britain, UAE, and other nations are still vulnerable to these attacks by the Houthis. And Israel over the weekend sent the clarion call basically into Yemen saying you need to vacate post haste because bombings are coming.
Mm-hmm. Look, I don't like when President Trump jumps the shark like this without tying in our allies. Does he need to tie in every single ally in the world when he does something like this? No. But, Israel's pretty relevant in this case. They're the country. They're getting hit with a lot more stuff than the ships are. And not having at least discussed this with Netanyahu, I think was foolish. We don't need to do that. That's an unforced error, in my opinion. And the president and his folks should rectify that as quickly as possible by getting with the Israelis, finding out what we can do to square this circle and get things back in alignment, because we don't want to send a message to any of the Iranian proxies or to the Iranians themselves that there's any light between our position and Israel's position. That would be a huge mistake, and whether that was the intent or not, that's kind of what's happened. And I think we need to fix that as quickly as possible.
Let's jump over to Eastern Europe. Zelensky and Putin exchanging bon mots, there's a desire to meet in Turkey this week to discuss a cessation of hostilities, but Zelensky wants a ceasefire prior to a sit-down in Turkey, but he also said, I'll be in Turkey to see if Putin is serious about negotiating peace. Trump wants the meeting to happen. He posted on Truth Social about it. How do you distill this development?
I don't trust Putin as far as I could throw him. He is not a legitimate negotiating partner. He says, "Oh yeah, let's have a ceasefire," and then he just keeps shooting. And then when Ukraine responds, then he goes, "Oh, see, it's all their fault. They're not following the ceasefire." Well, okay, neither are you, and it was your idea. So I think we need to push Putin further, and as far as demands before you give him anything, and hold him to what he says he's going to do. And when he doesn't, then there should be an adjustment to our policy.
So Zelensky, so Zelensky shouldn't meet with them on Thursday unless there is a ceasefire in place as a condition of that meeting.
I wouldn't, but I know he's pretty desperate to get a ceasefire, and he wants this thing to end. And Putin doesn't want it to end; he wants it to keep going. That's not a good negotiating starting point for the two adversaries here. So, I think he needs to make sure he's got something in hand before he invests his credibility in it. And for sure, we shouldn't invest our credibility in it until we've got a little more assurance than Putin has been given anybody.
What if Zelensky demands that Steven Seagal be sent as Putin's representative, that he'll talk to Steven Seagal and no one other than Steven Seagal? Because, he was at the World War II victory thing in Russia.
Yeah. Steven Seagal, who I love all of his old movies. Yeah. He was one of my heroes because the movies were just so over the top. But he's got some interesting taste in friends.
Yeah. He's got some interesting taste generally. You see how he's blown up? My goodness.
Yeah, he's kind of, he has not aged well.
No, he's not.
Just a little bloated, guys. It's no big deal.
So,
got to watch his salt intake, okay?
First he ruined Kelly LeBrock, and then he ruined himself. But I digress.
I forgot.
So let's talk about some accomplishments that I mentioned. Just some color from you on that. The release of the last American in captivity under the last Hamas hostage, Adon Alexander, and then also too this that was celebrated as well. It should be, but so below the fold was the United States, the Trump administration negotiating some small D Democrat dissidents out of persecution by Maduro and out of Venezuela. Just to distinguish for the larger American audience, there's nothing against Venezuela. There's something against Tren de Aragua and Maduro sending us criminals. But for like the small D Democrat dissidents in Venezuela that are trying to free their country from the clutches of Maduro, we're friends.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing we expect our government to do, to use some nuance. You don't accept guys who are identified gang members as, persecuted people. They're criminals, right? Criminals are supposed to be persecuted in any country. But these people, if we have identified and vetted them as truly persecuted dissidents in that country, trying to help them either get out or do something to change their government, that's perfectly legitimate. It makes all the sense in the world. Accepting people that are going to be more problematic when they get here than when they're there, that's their problem. They need to live with that, and we should not be helping them do that. That's good sense, diplomacy and policy. But, we still got to fix the other problem. But this was a good thing.
Do you give credit to Steve Witkoff? Do you think this sort of real estate developer turned a special envoy is equal to the tasks in all these theaters? In combination with the national security and the diplomatic professionals. Are you impressed with the team that is working these issues?
Well, he had some early victories there. Getting the people out of Russia. There were some good things that he did. I thought he had a specific portfolio for the Ukraine-Russia deal and trying to work that. And then suddenly he was popping up in the Middle East and all these other places. I don't know if anybody has the bandwidth to effectively negotiate all those things. I mean, other than the Secretary of State, that's kind of what they do. They have to cover the whole world. Usually these special envoys are a little bit more restricted in their portfolio. This guy has gotten some good things. The most recent thing where he apparently was using the Russians' translators so he wouldn't have to bother to bring his own, that's not that smart.
No,
they lie, and they're what they tell you might not be what the guy is saying. So you always want to have your bases covered. You have to be wise, and remember, dealing with somebody like Putin. Putin's a spy, and not just a spy. He was a wet work guy. He went out and whacked people for the Kremlin in the old days. So he's not exactly a let's all shake hands and go drink tea kind of fella. He doesn't drink alcohol, which is really bizarre for a Russian. But he is a
It's the
pretty
new
hardcore
in thing not to
fella.
drink anymore, okay?
No, but you're right. It's actually there's a parallel too. Right? He was KGB. Like that's I think basically in his DNA at this stage, long ago, and it remains there. And it's sort of like what we were talking about with al-Sharaa in Syria. He's an Al-Qaeda terrorist. You can put a suit on, and he can try to westernize himself in terms of appearance. He's still Al-Qaeda terrorist. I mean that's sort of his mentality, his posture. He's not going to change, and neither is Putin. So it's about managing expectations, but never forgetting who these people are. You would think that people would understand that.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, I'm not saying that no one can change. People can change. But boy, you got to have some really overwhelming evidence to prove it.
Yeah, Tell me your epiphany
you
story.
embrace them and kiss them on both cheeks. It's just kind of you got to be smart.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I want to hear the epiphany story. Steven Bucci served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official. Now visiting fellow in the Hertiage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Steven, thank you as always.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and look forward to talking to you next week.
Yeah, have a great week. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Frondelmax Vextolando.
Why are you dressed like a wizard?
Because the Brooklyn Cabinet at Penny